Hi there, everyone. This is Michael Leo, the static site editor, and I'm joined by Chad. Today, we're going to go through some issue refinement session. This time, it's led by myself, because John's on PTO, but also specifically, as I was refining some of these issues for 13.5, I ran into some questions about what these things actually will be. So let me share my screen, and I think that will help with the conversation. Cool. So the first thing that I have questions around is with the issue around adding a title and description for the MR. So at the moment, in my early specs, this was like the designs using kind of like the stepper pattern to indicate a title for the change and the description for the change. This component doesn't exist yet in Pajamas, and it would require us building it or waiting for that component to be ready. It exists in like sign up flows and like plan choosing or checkout flows, but as a formal component, it doesn't exist yet. So as I was looking at this design for 13.5, I thought to simplify it.
Which component specifically?
This the blue number,
Okay.
see the 1 and 2. I kind of like stole this design, I was inspired by this design. It's a stepper component, so usually it's used for wizards where you kind of have like step 1, fill out this information, step 2, fill out this. So kind of like a checkout flow could be really used for this. So, you know, here's your product info, here's checkout information, here's shipping information. It's usually used in those contexts. We also use it in other places as well, but it's not like a real component yet. But there's an
Is it in
issue.
the Figma pajamas?
No, not yet.
No.
No. There's an issue out that's still open to look into formalizing it and building it into Pajamas. So in the spirit of keeping things simple, I didn't really think we needed it yet. It was a good tool to say like, okay, first do this, then second do this, but we only have 2 fields. I think we could get by without doing it. What I'm proposing to change it to is submit your changes with just a label. And my question for today is, what is this? What is going to be this like? Oops. This text area that we're going to get people to add the description. Will it just be
That's
text
the description
area?
field of the MR.
Yeah. So
Oh,
the value that will go in here will what we're hoping to do is populate the MR description with it.
so what do you mean by what is this? Like what type
Is
of
it
a
a
field?
text area? Is it like from a component wise? Like here, kind of suggesting that
The
it's
MR accepts Markdown, right? So
hmm?
it doesn't have to be Markdown, but it could be.
Yeah. So what I didn't know from an implementation standpoint was like, will we be using something that allows you to add in kind of like formatted, like helps you input Markdown, or will it be just like a text area?
I would imagine looking long term, people would want it to behave as similarly as possible to the description field on the MR, which means that it would have like a template drop down as well.
Hmm.
If it's going to be integrated with GitLab fully.
Yeah. So templates is one thing that did come up in a lot of user testing, user research. People be like, oh, you know, if I'm doing a specific thing, I expect a template. The other thing that this is hinting at is this whole idea of dogfooding the static site editor, like almost having the static site editor inside the static site editor. So I didn't know how far we wanted to take this, whether we just pre-populate it with like one standard like template for, the default handbook template for changes, or is it just going to be blank? This is a question I'm not, I yeah, this is a big question mark for me.
I would say, I don't, long term, it probably should be WYSIWYG,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's the static site editor or not, and should have the template drop down. For the first iteration, I would just make it a text field and
Okay,
maybe note that, people can write GitLab Markdown.
cool. All right. Let's go with that for now. I'll make a note in the issue saying that, well, one approach for this for 13.5 is just to use a text area and saying maybe with a description text, this you can write in Markdown for now. I'm good with that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be an easy one to add the editor, but I would say in any case, it should be a stretch goal. Trying to get it out for this release.
That's cool. So the next one is this issue here where we want to move the progress, the loading animation to be on a new page. So this is taking our success page and kind of changing it into a status or a progress view. For 13.5, I think this is kind of like an iteration that kind of makes sense. It's like a spinner and the loader is still there. That's what we have right now. But my question is, will we be able to, like, can we do something more, or should we do something more, or should it be a separate issue to add more information? So feedback. So we know that the spinning loading is because we are creating a branch, submitting changes to that branch, and then creating a merge request with that branch. And once everything is done, that's when we say your merge request is ready. That's done using promises, and I was wondering if it's worth jumping, like, are we able to hook into those promises to give feedback to say, yep, creating branches, step 1 is done, step 2 is done, step 3 is done. Or should we just keep it simple for now and start off like this? And just talking, it feels like we should keep it simple, but I wanted to get some feedback.
Yeah, it should definitely be possible, and I think we should do that. But I'm always going to say do this simplest possible implementation first.
Okay, cool.
And I think that channels what I hear a lot from Sid and other people in the iteration hours and stuff. And from my perspective, like with the experience of last release, like the simpler you can keep it, because you never know what's going to happen with the review cycle, or if it's going to turn into a few days, even if the change is simple, and especially if you're trying to break the AMRs down iteratively. So
Okay.
the one thing though that we did mention that I don't see here is a call out that we mentioned when we discussed this in the previous issue refinement, was a call out that they can close this window if they want to. They're not going to lose any information. Like, to make
Okay.
it really clear, they can go on with whatever the rest of their work is, or they could wait for the button to show up.
Cool. Yeah, I think I missed that point in the call, and I will add that point. Thanks.
Yeah, that was sort of the main point, one of the main points of moving this to the end, so we wouldn't block whatever they were doing. There was no longer this confusion, like, do I have to stand around and wait for this
Cool.
finish whatever it's doing and with no feedback? And now they have some feedback and an explicit message, no, you don't have to wait.
All right. Fun question to you. The reason one might stay on this page is that the next step in a merge request is always assigning someone to review it, or like shepherding the change, or like merging it down. So most people don't have the permissions to merge to the main branch. So typically you would need to assign a reviewer.
I see. So maybe the wording of it is along with that first paragraph. It's like, or you can leave the page now and do this later, but don't forget. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or something to the effect of if you have further changes, you can leave the page and work on the MR later.
So if I create an MR and I didn't assign myself to the MR, it doesn't show up in this MR navigation. It just goes into the land of merge requests. And that's correct, right? I think you're on mute, or
I am sorry. If nobody's, I don't know if the API by default assigns the assigner to it, or if you have to do that explicitly, but that's a good point. Perhaps as part of creating the MR, we should ensure that the person doing it is assigned, and then where do they do it? Right here by clicking the link, or later, they can ensure they can find it.
Cool. So one thing that's on my mind with this whole creation of MRs, and if we close the window, is getting back to the MR. Would it be like bad practice to assign the person who created, for example, if I created this change, when the static site editor is doing its job here, and when it creates the merge request, it assigns myself as the assignee. Therefore, it pops up in the merge requests area. And then that's how I can go back to it easily without going through the left navigation to merge requests and search my merge requests.
So even if you don't assign it to yourself, you can still find it as the creator, right? It'll show up that you created it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just gonna do a fake thing here. So where I want it to show up eventually is like the merge request. So what I'm getting at here is either I kind of want to get the wording right to like, how do I find this merge request again?
Right.
Because if we say, yeah, you can close and come back later, that's cool. But how do I come back? What's the URL I would use to get
So
back?
if you click in that search bar there.
Okay, cool. So let's say I want to go back to this one eventually.
So there should be a drop down there. Oh, it's loading. Give it a second.
Are you
No,
talking
don't type
about?
anything.
Are you talking about the new
just click
search
in it.
that's?
No, I'm not. Just take the text out and just put nothing in it. Don't type update.
Okay.
Just leave it empty. Like click out and click back in. When I click in there, perhaps you need to be on the main page. Like go to the merge request tab. Sorry,
That's all right.
for this project.
Yes, I think that's the problem. I wasn't associated to a project, so I didn't know where to start with me.
You need to be in www.gitlab.com. But anyway,
Oh,
it would be under.
okay. Let me just go there.
So you see merge request I've created. Click that,
Interesting.
and then it should be right there.
Huh. I never knew about this. Thank you for showing me this.
I actually just
And
found it right as you asked. But I saw that on Slack yesterday, and it seems like this box does a lot of really cool stuff, and I should try it out more.
yeah, because the recent one was like there's an update to the search. The search functionality got improved.
It shows everything you've touched recently.
Yeah, the recently stuff. But I think this is kind of cool because
That may only work when you're on the main page, though.
okay,
I'm not sure.
okay, where else could I be? That might not work.
No, actually, mine is working from here. Recent issues that comes up.
So let's say I jump into this in the depth of a pipeline. Cool. This is
So if
interesting
you just type
because
like merge, you should get the recent issues. That's what you were talking about.
yeah, but I don't see it here. Maybe it's just for the GitLab project.
I don't
Maybe.
know. Maybe it's an A/B test, or maybe it is. No, I'm on www and I see it.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. So if what might be a better image here is probably potentially this drop down to say like to go back to find this later, just click on here.
Yeah, does it work independently of what page they're on? It
It
seems
feels like
to.
it is.
Yeah, it would have to. Maybe the text could include a link to say like, go to your project and then include a link to the project and then show the drop down.
Or we can just
Or
give them this
the
link.
merge request tab of the project. Yes, that would be. Yeah, a link directly to that would be best.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I don't know why yours isn't showing all the things mine does all the time.
Do you have GitLab Next as well, or are you on something else?
Yes, I am. I'm on next. Like search, put static in there. Maybe there just wasn't a hit for the recent one.
Huh. This is strange because I did see it earlier.
Mm-hmm. It says loading. It seems like there's.
But this is not what it should show up with. There. See the recent merge
Merge
request.
request. Okay, it
Okay.
just took a while to populate.
But it's kind of, yeah, I think it takes a while because now when I do it, it pops up. So I think,
Right, so it's doing a backend request.
cool.
Populating it with a push.
Gotcha. So that's good. So my action item here will be to refine the information here. We'll keep it simple with the spinner, but we can potentially show a link here to view all the merge requests related to me.
Right, with the instructions being to the effect of, or if you don't want to wait, you can find it later here.
Cool. Thank you. And so this next part is talking about associating a change to an existing merge request. So,
Is
so
this
one thing,
is this still the same MR or the same refinement?
different MR. So for context, this associating changes to an existing MR is twofold. There's like one where you might be coming from the merge request page because you just made a change to the static site editor, like what we just did here. Right. So let's say I went into here. I'm in the wrong project. That's cool. So let's say I went into here and I'm like, oh, I want to make another change. But the only options I have right now is to edit in the Web IDE. Or if I go to changes, then in here I can go to the single file editor or the Web IDE to edit the single page. But if I do that, then I lose out on the stuff in the static site editor that I'm familiar with because I'm editing content. So how do I get back to it? So one idea is to change this into a split button as well. So kind of potentially something like this, where it's instead of open web IDE, it could be one approach is open and it has the arrow. Another approach is to have a split button, open web IDE or open a static site editor.
So what does that mean that for this to be on the main overview page and you don't know a specific file in the MR they want to edit, but the static site editor still only supports one file? They would have to select a file.
Okay, cool.
So I could see it being in the drop down on the diffs or changes page, but
yeah, I think that would be the easiest one. There's already a spot for it.
Right.
Cool. Thank you. That was good. That clarified that.
And so are we just looking to put it one place? Because theoretically it could show up anywhere that the other single file editor button shows up.
Yep.
Which is several different places, I think.
Okay. I don't have those places mapped out yet, but I think that's a good activity to do.
Yeah, like for the file in the repository view, like out of the MR flow, I know it shows up there. Yep, cool. That's the one other one I know. I bet there's some others somewhere.
Cool. All right. And then the other part where, so the other flow that we were talking about was, let's say I was on the handbook page, and then I go into the static site editor, but I want to associate this change to an existing merge request. So this is taking the static site editor into the multi-page world. So here with the static site editor, I entered it, and now I want to say, you know what, I don't want to create a new merge request for this. I just want to associate this change here to one of my existing merge requests that I already have on the fly, on the go, right? So the problem we had initially in our previous solution validation was it was too hidden, the way to select your merge request or configure your merge request. And this is an idea I have where we use the bottom area here where we had the title to become like an area to control the merge requests. So this is an example where there's a merge request assigned, and this is like one potential way of handling what this would look like. And like this is another way of kind of handling what that could look like.
And the change button would bring up that other list?
Yeah, it would open up something to allow you to search for another merge request. Whether I think it's one thing that Derek mentioned in the past was the list is like okay, but another way to do it would be to have like a search field or a filter where you can like search and find like a autocomplete lookup. So that's another way we could do that.
Yeah, there's another place on the existing MR view where you can paste a link or type numbers. Have you seen that?
No, like one of these things, like when you do this.
No, like if you click edit, this is an MR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you click edit, there's this merge request dependencies,
Mm-hmm.
which I just know that's a similar thing. I don't think this auto completes though. No. So I think that has to be the full URL. Maybe even the numbers don't work. The other place that this has precedent is on an epic. If you find when you add an issue to an epic, have you seen that one?
No, but is that similar to like the related issues and stuff like that, or is it different?
No, I think it's a little more sophisticated. Like if you just pick an epic, I'll try to find one to send you link.
Yeah.
Here's one. I'll send you one in Slack.
Awesome.
Sorry, I said it on Zoom.
Okay, no worries.
Words are hard.
It's early for you and late for me, so.
So if you click the add button,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's add an existing issue. So this is sort of the similar thing, but a little bit different. I thought this, yeah, it's not really a drop down. That's the other one that I know.
Yeah. So yeah, something like this would potentially be one.
Especially for the first iteration, if I don't know how self-contained or cohesive this code is to just pull it in as is and not have to write it ourselves.
Yeah, so where I'm getting like the idea of this list of issues is like this is what we did for the Figma plugin where we pull in a list of issues that you have touched recently or like and they kind of appear up here. So this is where my idea of having a list of issues or MRs comes in.
Seems good. And as long as it's accompanied by a filter that you can still get an old one if it's not on your list.
Mm-hmm. So that's the paste an issue URL.
Paste an issue URL.
If you can't find it or like it's not on the list, it would just yeah, you can paste in the URL and
oh sure. So you implemented this recently, and so we already have all the code to look at for it.
Yeah,
Seems
we
fine.
have the code to look at for that.
Sure, that looks great.
Okay. Now I need your help
Should
with
probably put it in
wording.
those other two places in the app. That would be helpful.
Okay. So,
Because I think especially the MR one, it doesn't even seem to work if you paste like the pound form. At least last time I tried it. I could be
okay.
wrong.
Okay. Um, so I have issues with this phrasing here, like saving changes to new merge request or even like saving to this merge request because you don't save stuff to a merge request, you save stuff to like a branch, right? Or is it okay to say saving changes?
So technically you're adding a commit to the merge request. But I know in the past we've tried to stay away from technical terminology, which is why we said saving. So
Hmm.
if you're trying to be vague and not use technical words, saving is probably fine. If you're trying to be accurate, it would be uh, making a new commit to the merge request.
Okay.
Maybe you could put that in parentheses, say saving changes, and then or a hover. I don't know. Are are hovers bad practice in GitLab
Uh,
UI standards or not? Like tool
like
helpers hovers with additional information like that. Like if you hovered over saving and it said creating a commit on the UI just as additional information, but without cluttering the UI. What's the
mm,
standard on that? I guess it doesn't work on
so,
mobile. Well,
yeah. No, it does work on mobile. So the tooltips like the eyes, the informations and stuff like that, that's in
okay.
GitLab do work um, on mobile. The other way to approach the design is always like, can you take the information that's inside the tooltip and extract it somehow onto the page? And the question then becomes, if it's on the page, should it go like somewhere on the page? And if it's not worthwhile to have on the page, the question is like, why do you really need it? So I come from, my personal preference on it is always to try to avoid using them because it's like more work to update and maintain, and but it does save space. So um,
So the other way to look at this is anybody who knows how merge request works, it's probably going to be pretty obvious what we mean by saving.
mm,
And if they don't, it will probably be pretty obvious after they do a couple of them what
mm,
saving means. So
mm,
maybe it's not that big of a deal,
mm. Cool.
especially if they're going to have a link to it and at the end when they're done, and then they could see a commits tab and with their commit on it of whatever they typed as the description.
Okay.
So I had one other question that brought up,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
don't know if
Go
you've
on.
got more.
Uh,
So
as
even for subsequent updates, they're still going to get that same dialogue with the description and or title and description. That's only when they're making.
um, so title and description. So if we go, so you're talking about this one,
I
right?
guess the question it really brings up is like what we were looking at before is just the MR, and we're still going to have a default
Hmm.
message for the commit.
Yep. Um,
Okay,
yep. So,
that makes sense.
so that brings us to what I've been trying to. This is like not ready for anything yet, but yeah. So far
Mm,
in our group, we've just been talking about the MR as like, and it's like a one-shot deal. You have one shot to make the change and work in the static site editor, and that's it. One thing that came up in solution validation last time is if I made a subsequent change, or I wanted to add a commit message to my change that's different from my MR title, am I able to do that? Other tools don't really let you do that. So when I say other tools, it's like other kind of like static site editor tools out there that kind of trying to make it user friendly. They kind of abstract it away and just have like updated from this tool as like automated messages, and then they squash it on merging. But if we want to practice best practices for the handbook scenario, yeah, what I'm thinking is that like on the first time you create it, yeah, you would have to add the title and the MR and all that stuff. But subsequent ones become just like adding a change message and submitting the change. And if you want to edit it or update this, then you go about updating that. And which brings us back to this whole idea of like checkout flows and stuff like that, where the information that's like constant is like would be like the title and the description, but the things that keep on changing, it would be like, this is a very abstract view, but it's like information about the merge request here, but like new stuff would appear here, like here's a change for like describe this most recent change. So only like the things that need to be filled in will be like opened. um yeah, and that takes us to this kind of flow where this bottom button becomes like review changes, and then that's the part that would pop up the merge request details, and then provides you a gateway to view your recent change, add a commit message, and submit it. Yeah, right now, that's like probably like a few milestones down the road. But step
Okay.
one towards that is like re-entering the static site editor, or like joining an existing merge request.
Right. I think that all makes sense. I personally, for my persona, think that the commit message is important. Uh, and also when you think about, for example, in the main GitLab repo, there's a lot of pretty strict rules about how the commit message must be formatted, and they're
Mm-hmm.
set up as like pre-commit hooks.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, not that many people might have that set up for their static sites, but it's still possible. And so in some cases, people may need to have control over that in order to even make a valid commit message.
Yep.
But that would definitely be just a plain text. It would be a text area because it could be multi-line, but
Yep.
it's not marked down.
Yep. Totally agree. And then on the flip side of that, we'll also have scenarios with people using the static site editor who are like the sole user and would like commit directly to main or master, and
Mm-hmm.
and then that would be a different option that we'll probably have to explore, where changes you make just automatically kick off the build processes and all that.
Yep, just like the web IDE, and that's how I do it on my personal repos.
Mm,
When I do use the web IDE, I just click the master box,
yep.
unprotect it.
Yep. Cool. All right. Um, this is good. Thank you for. I think we covered all the points in the agenda items. I'll update the agenda items with the points that we talked about and the subsequent issues tomorrow, and then yeah, and then the engineers involved in those tickets can chime in on that. So I appreciate your time today, Chad, for hanging out with me and discussing some of these UI um, ch- challenges for myself.
Yeah, I think it was good. I think we got good stuff done.
Cool. I'm gonna stop the recording. Did I record this?